And we will actually start the live stream right now. So if you want to do that, just make sure that you do it right now, if that's okay. So yeah, and besides that, I'm so excited again that so many of you are joining us, because this event is really supposed to be about you and also for every single one of you. You will get to be inspired by our speakers. You can engage in discussions yourself and leave the summit afterwards with new impressions on how you can be the change you wish to see in the world. So with that being said, I'm representing today a young European and also a world citizen, but also the Romanian NGO Patria, who has been working on the topics we are addressing today for more than 20 years now. And we have put together this event, but I also want to take the chance to thank our partners from the Center for the Study of Democracy from Bulgaria today, Marian Sabev and Rolica. Rolica, if you'd like to say a few words as well, feel free.
Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here today. And on behalf of the Center for the Study of Democracy, let me express my sincere gratitude to the organizers, to Patria, for the opportunity to contribute to this event. CSD has also worked for many years on the issues we are addressing today. But one lesson stands out. We have learned a very important thing. One of the most powerful ways to build resilience towards things like polarization, hate speech, radicalization, things that we'll be discussing today and we'll be looking for solutions, is showing young people credible alternatives for action and empower them to take such action. The best way to convey such alternative ways of thinking and acting is through role models. But role models need to be authentic, they need to be credible, they need to be convincing and inspiring. And let me assure you, I cannot think of more authentic and inspiring role models than the young people, speakers, participants gathered here today, who show through their action how democracy and democratic values can be lived and experienced, and how they can lead to empowerment and social connection as opposed to alienation. So by speaking up today, you not only send a very strong message to policymakers on how the future of Europe and our society should look like, but you also show your peers that change is possible and that your voice matters. And regardless how big or small the issues we face, we can always find support to overcome this together. So yeah, I thank you once again. I welcome everyone. I encourage you to be bold today, to share your ideas and to share creativity. And I'm very excited to hear your ideas and to learn from you. Thank you. Have a very inspiring and fruitful day.
Thank you so much, Rosica. You really stressed the point of the event today. And with that being said, of course, we are not the only people who can organize such an event. So, Rafaela, welcome also from you for our participants.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today. Like Louisa mentioned, we are more than glad for having so many people joining us today in this amazing event. My name is Rafaela, and I'm from Portugal. And I'm also one of the co-organizers of the Youth Summit. And if I may, I would like to share with everyone here today that preparing this event has truly been a roller coaster, but I couldn't be happier with the final result. And I hope that we spent an amazing time together today. Now I'd like to introduce you to one of the co-founders of the Shaping the Future of Europe initiative, Claudia Cruz Almeida. Claudia supports the Conflict Transformation Department as an intern at Berghoff Foundation and is currently pursuing her master's degree in Peace and Conflict Studies at the Otto von Guercke Universität Magdeburg. Prior to joining Berghoff, Claudia gained experience in the field of peace building by completing in 2019 an internship at the Permanent Mission of Spain to the United Nations Office at Vienna, and in 2020, an internship at the Peace Action Training and Research Institute of Romania, Patria. In her work and research, Claudia focuses on post-conflict transitions and nonviolent movements, adopting a gender-sensitive lens. She also holds a double bachelor's degree in international business and international relations from the European University of Madrid, and she enjoyed exchange experiences at the Europa Universitat Viadrina and the London School of Economics and Political Science. She has already completed a first master's degree in development, cooperation, and emancipatory education from the University of the Basque Country. So thank you, Claudia, for being here with us today, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Welcome everyone, and thank you for such a warm welcome here. And I would like to say that I remember when we started this initiative, we were in a garden, 3 people with distance and with a flip chart, writing ideas. What youth like? What are we interested in? What can we do for the Youth Summit? And now, some months after and a lot of work behind, seeing it realizing is just amazing. And in my brief intervention, I just want to emphasize why it's important that we youth have the voice and that we make the change. If we will be in the same room, it will be easier to do these dynamics, but I will make some questions just to launch them here on the floor, and you can think about them yourself. Like, think about if you have ever been bullied. Think about if you have ever been harassed. Have you ever been judged by the way you dress, by the people you kiss, by the people you love, or your appearance, ethnicity, age, gender, identity? Have you ever felt discouraged of what others tell you and felt, okay, I'm not powerful enough. I must surrender. I must just give up to this world that is just violent against us. If you have felt like that, let's think on a moment if we are experiencing the problem, why we are not part of the solution. We know the problem, we are experiencing it. So then let's speak about it, and let's us, the youth, have a voice in order to solve all this polarization, extremism, and violence that is occurring in Europe nowadays. As Rosita was mentioning, the Youth Summit is a space for creativity. So yes, the youth, we are creative, we are open-minded, we have new ideas, and the best, we are full of energy, not only for party, but also for making a change. And that's why we need to prove society. Unfortunately, the youth sometimes are not taken serious. And we need to prove the rest of the people that we want to make the change. Sometimes they just listen to people 60 years old experience, which their experience is extremely valuable and grateful. And we need to hear those, and we need to learn from the past. But also we need to hear from the current generations. And sometimes it's amazing. You ask a 3-year-old child about racism and you will be surprised what they tell you. So we need to have this intergenerational approach and hear all the voices. And in this Youth Summit, especially the youth voices. And most of the revolutions started in the student councils, the youth discussing in the universities and in the school what we want and the revolution that we want. Therefore, let's acknowledge that we can make the change. But how we can make the change? Okay. Do we want to go out at night without feeling fearful? Do we want to post a picture in Instagram or a video in TikTok without having the fear of what they would comment, what they would say about me? Do we actually be whoever we want to be and have our own identity and kiss whoever we want to kiss? Okay, we want that, right? We want our freedom, we want our liberty. But it's not going to be easy to achieve it. We will need to fight peacefully for it. And let's go for it. Let's pursue it. No one is going to bring us the solution if we just sit and wait until the governments respond to climate change, to polarization, to extremism. Then we can be waiting here for years. It has been proved in history that if we go to the street and peacefully protest and make a change and different steps in order to pursue a peaceful society, it is possible to achieve the change. And we can be the change that we want to see in the world, as the Do One Brave Thing project always reminded. But we need to be proactively aiming for that change. I will share a brief personal experience. I'm from Spain, but I live in a city in Germany, a little city. And 2 weeks ago, I experienced my 4th time being harassed in a tram because of speaking in Spanish with my mom in the phone. Classical walking home or being in the public transport, and you call your mom just to tell her how are you doing. And you speak in your own language, even though you are in a foreign country. But the people do not like that. And they insulted me. They told me, you go back to your country. Are you stupid? You don't know German, you don't know our language. Why are you speaking another language? And then after that time, I felt really discouraged, and I felt, you know, I should move to another city, maybe to Berlin, Cluj, open-minded city. But then why? Why should I run away? Why I should not make the change in the community? And then I started researching in Instagram, because it's the social media I use the most, which are the youth initiatives that are in my city. And I found a foundation, it's called Love Foundation. And I joined the online meeting one day spontaneously. And there were 15 beautiful, lovely people that are cultural artists, and they do amazing things. And they want to change the city where I live for a better society. And they want to make a change. And then they show me that I should not run away. I should find those people that want to be upstanders and that actually are feeling the same way I feel, rather than give the back to that society that's been extremist and polarized. Just let's find the people that want to make the change. Now, for finishing, I would like to ask you to stand up. Yes, literally, like you don't need to put your camera, but I would like you to stand up. If you can, thank you. Those that have the camera on, and close your eyes. If in a world without COVID, we will be now in a park or in a stadium, in an auditorium, and imagine we are all in a circle and we can hold hands to each other. We have been tested negative in COVID, everyone, so it's fine. We can hug and hold our hands. And you feel the energy of the people that is next to you. And you feel that they also want to make the change. And you are not alone. Now you open the eyes and you see that everyone here in the screen is standing up and is also wanting to make the change. So we are definitely not alone. Let's go out and show the world that we, the youth, we have a voice and we stand up for peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your words, Claudia. They were truly inspiring, and I'm sure that everyone right now is feeling super motivated and actually powerful to take a stand and to fight for what they believe is right. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that you're joining us today and for your amazing intervention. And now I'd just like to ask if someone from the audience would like to share something, a word, a thought on what you just said, or something that is also important to them. So please, you can just unmute yourself and just say what you're thinking right now. And don't be shy. For anyone who wishes to just share a word or something that you remember when you were hearing Claudia. Or...
Rafaela, I think Veronica Pavlovska has raised her hand. Please, Veronica.
Yeah. Yes.
So I really loved what you said, and I think that everything that you said is true. Like, I'm just a teenager, I'm 17 years old, but I've always been thinking that, okay, in order to have a life, I have to leave my country, I have to go somewhere else, I have to find that better life. But now I think that I should start with my community first, because running away won't change anything. I can start right now and do something great. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Veronica. Would someone else would like to share something? Okay, then. So once again, thank you so much, Claudia, for joining us. We know that you have to run away now, but once again, we're really grateful for your intervention, for your really inspiring words. And we hope that we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. So thank you so much.
Yeah, also thank you again so much from me, Claudia. That was a very, very amazing insight. And I'm so sad you can't be with us for the whole day today, but thank you for joining for these minutes. And I think we have another contribution on the chat from Zuhal about us all connecting, or of connecting people who have the same ideas. And I think that's true, because as long as we are connecting, you know, we can have networks that can actually make a change, because together we are a bigger group. We are a very big group, actually, that can make a change in the world. And with that being said, I am very honored to introduce you to our next speaker, which is going to be Kai Brandt-Jacobson, whom you've already seen here. Kai started as a youth activist when he was 13 as part of a national campaign in Canada against gender-based violence. He started working internationally in peace building at 17 years old in former Yugoslavia and Afghanistan. When he was only 21, he was one of the co-founders of the Romanian Peace Institute, today one of the leading organizations in its field in the world. Today, Kai is the president of Patria and continues with the same passion and dedication as when he first began. In 2019, he was awarded the Mahatma Gandhi Martin Luther King Jr. Daisaku Ikeda Lifetime Achievement Award. He is a practitioner, a scholar, a researcher, and a passionate advocate for the engagement of youth and all generations for addressing the challenges and issues we face in the world today. We are so glad, Kai, to have you with us today, and I'm very much looking forward to your insight right now. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Luisa, and thank you, Luisa, Rafaela, Rosica, Marianne, Claudia, and everybody who has been involved in the preparation of this incredible event. And thank you also to everyone who is joining us from all around the world. I remember when the first discussions for creating this event were taking place, and I have to tell you, I have goosebumps right now myself as we've been listening to the introductory comments, the welcoming, and seeing everyone coming on board. I am going to give a bit of a presentation, which will take a little while, but I hope it's going to help us in setting the scene for our discussions today. And I actually have to begin by apologizing, because some of what I'm going to present can be challenging and can be difficult for us. And I hope that through the course of today, we'll also have the space to speak about this together. But it's important because it's part of what is happening. And I see that we're joined by friends and colleagues from all over the world. So I know a lot of what I'm going to present are also not only ideas or words, but realities that many of us are living with. So I'm starting here to share the presentation, and perhaps you can let me know if it's coming through okay. Do you see this, everyone? Great.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to start with the good, because sometimes when we're speaking about what's happening in the world, we actually have a tendency to speak a lot about the challenges that we're facing, and they're there. We're going to go into those. But I want to also take us through some of what we have achieved, some of the extraordinary things we've achieved as a species in recent years and throughout many decades. We have more children in school today than ever before in human history. Not right at this moment with COVID, which is impacting people in so many different ways around the world, but through these recent years, and especially more girl children in school than ever before in human history. We have more people that are taking part in voting and engaging from local to national to different levels of politics. And there are a lot of challenges with those political systems. And in fact, in the last 10 years, we've seen a dramatic reduction in the space of democracy and freedom and the authenticity of democratic systems in the world, but still on a world historical scale. Just over 120 years ago, over 80% of the Earth's surface was covered by empires and monarchies and colonies. And still that's with us in many ways in reality, but we are achieving progress that is important to recognize. We have more people having access to medicines, and we're able to cure what my grandmother passed away from more than 50 years ago today would be cured in minutes. So we are achieving incredible progress. And at the same time, we have so many hundreds of millions of people that don't have access to even the most basic medicines because of political and economic choices and systems. So on the one hand, making this incredible advance and progress, and on the other hand, because of how we are dealing with our choices and our resources today, still many people not having access. And we are today scientifically able to create artificial limbs that can help people be able to use hands. The young girl you saw in the picture before, immediately after that picture was taken, took part throwing a ball for the first time in her life in a sports game. Here you see an artificial limb which has been printed with 3D printing. These technologies used to be so incredibly expensive. Today, this particular limb was produced for $17. It is lighter, it's more comfortable. We're making these things accessible to more and more people. And I know this is still so far away from a reality that many people in the world have, but it is a reality that we're increasingly being able to bring forward. This picture takes my breath away, because here you see a young girl who's able to work at night in an area where there's very limited access to electricity. And the way that her lamp by which she's studying is being powered is 2 electric nodes that are plugged into the soil where a plant is growing. Do not ask me how this is being done, because I have no idea of the technology behind it. Fortunately, there are scientists, engineers, and others who do. But the fact that we're able to advance these technologies to bring clean water, to bring electricity, to help increasingly meet people's basic needs. And this picture itself is something that we can't, I think, ever cease to marvel at. The fact that we've been able to understand and unravel DNA and the building blocks of life. And with this, being able to achieve advances in medicine that we had hardly even begun to dream of just a few short decades ago.
Kai, I'm sorry, but we can't see your slides changing.
So where are you
Unfortunately
now?
We are still on the first one, where a child is given medicine.
And now?
It's not working.
Oh, that's terrible. Okay, let's see. How about if I put it like this? Do you see the pictures?
No, I actually think you will have to share your screen again.
Okay, let's stop that. I'm sorry, everyone, you've been missing these amazing pictures which have been going. Let us try to share that again, because half of the power is being able to see it. And what I might do is just take it forward this way. Are you seeing it now, this big picture here?
I only see a black screen right now.
I'm hoping this will come through in just a moment. I clicked share screen again, so it should be visible. Nothing coming through?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay, just a sec. I'm going to try something here. And then we will switch it if we need to. Just one moment, please, everyone, if you can bear with me. My apologies for this. I'm going to try something new. Okay. How about right now, Luisa?
It's also only black, I'm sorry, but you can also share it with somebody else of us and we will share it.
You know what? I'm going to exit very quickly, come back in, and hopefully that will help it. So just one moment and I'll be right back. Sorry for this.
Okay. I'm sorry, everyone, but you know, with Zoom, things can sometimes go wrong. But does anybody else already want to share something on what Kai has already said? Because I think, I mean, even though we can't see the pictures, only hearing about it is already pretty powerful and creating pictures in our minds, maybe. So just feel free to share any of your thoughts you have. Okay, you're back and we can see your PowerPoint.
All right. So these are some of the pictures. More girls in school, more people voting, having access to medicine. These are the limbs I was speaking to you about. The young girl who's able to read by this incredible technology, DNA. And then I was asking if people know what this picture is, if anyone has a guess.
That's a collider.
Exactly. This is the Large Hadron Collider that was built underneath the mountains between Switzerland and France. What I find amazing about this, there's a book written by the physicist Neil Turek, an incredible physicist and activist. His parents were anti-apartheid activists during the apartheid period in South Africa. They had to flee because the regime was actually threatening them, and there had been attempts on his father's life. And he writes in one of his wonderful books about the Large Hadron Collider. And he says that what he finds amazing about this is we literally spent billions of euros, had thousands of scientists working on this, and we weren't sure if it would work. We expected, we hoped, based upon the best of our knowledge. Now, some people can look at that and be terrified or horrified or shocked. How do we spend so much money on something like that when there's so many needs in the world? And that's a valid discussion. Reality is we do have the resources to cover the breadth of our needs, as I'm going to share in a moment. But what I find amazing about this is the human ability to create, to innovate, to think of something and to make it a reality. And this is what we can achieve when we bring our capacity to bear. And we're seeing advances in creating new types of technologies, new types of transport. This is a prototype of a bus which has actually begun being used in China that goes above the traffic and can take thousands of passengers at a time to make it more eco-friendly. This is a latest prototype car BMW is building. This is a neighborhood that was designed to be net positive in creating clean air and in purifying polluted air in Singapore. And this actually now exists. This entire neighborhood now exists in Singapore. So you could look across so many different issues, so many different fields of human experience, and find ways and areas in which we are achieving incredible progress. But this isn't the only story. And now I want to show us some of the other side as well. We're increasingly facing global epidemics. It's not only COVID. We're seeing this. This is an earlier picture of the Ebola crisis. When you look at the monitoring of global epidemics and health risks, they're in fact increasing. And in some ways, COVID is a light one compared to what epidemiologists are concerned we could face. And it's actually what we would call in conflict and risk analysis a simple problem. It's not a complex problem, because it's an area where we have a disease, we need to develop cures. We then need to be able to produce those. We then need to be able to distribute those. Most of the factors are known. It's not even that complex compared to some challenges we face. And look at how poorly we're dealing with it. So this raises up, how do we handle these problems and challenges that we face? That's what I'd like to ask us to think about as we go through these. We're having, just to check, you're seeing the picture still? Okay.
No.
No?
We are seeing the pictures, Kai, but they are not changing anymore. I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, I've done this presentation hundreds of times, so I have added a bit to it now. So I'm not sure why they're not changing. If they're not, I'm just going to keep going through with it, and I hope at least the ideas will have impact, but I will try again to share. And again, I apologize for this. Are you seeing anything now, Louisa?
The black screen has come up again. I don't know whether it's loading or whether you have to try to do it again.
Okay, then I'm just going to speak with you. Sorry, I've never experienced this problem in it.
I think
yes?
I think you're already creating a lot of pictures in our heads. So just go on.
All right. And I will share this with everyone after. We'll make sure that it's available, and actually maybe even take a video of it so that we can all see and present to everybody. In addition to what I've been discussing so far, we're also having organized climate destruction. It's not simply climate change or climate crisis. It is a systematic and systemic destruction of our environment that is brought about by our current economic system and model. Those are the pictures that I'm showing now. I don't know if you can see them. And the massive flooding, the pollution. We've got islands of garbage at sea, which you can see now from outer space. And they're the size, they're larger than some small physical islands. But it's not only that, it's also the plastic that then goes into our water particles, the plastic particles that go into our water, which now in most parts of the world, people actually have in their drinking water as well. We have incredible poverty that is increasing. The picture that I'm trying to show you now, I'm not sure if you can see it, is from just a few kilometers from where I'm sitting in the center of one of Romania's wealthiest cities, Pătărat, or in Delhi. Or this picture, Louisa mentioned the Mahatma Gandhi Martin Luther King Lifetime Achievement Award. I took this picture when I was being picked up from the airport, driven into Morehouse College, which is where Martin Luther King Jr. went to college. And these were people living under a bridge in Atlanta, one of the richest cities in the world. So many of them were actually veterans of military service in Iraq and Afghanistan. But you cannot exaggerate the scale of poverty which exists in the world today. This is also then impacting people's access to healthcare. These are children in a hospital just outside where we are in Cluj. And this is the other side. Can you see this picture? This is an apartment gilded in gold. It's one of the more than 30 homes of former President Donald Trump. This is one of his apartments in New York. In 2015, the 62 richest individuals in the world owned the same amount of wealth as the poorest 50%. Actually, the top 8 men in the world had more wealth than the poorest 50% of the world's population put together. What's interesting is that through COVID, this has only gotten much worse. And not only through COVID, you can also think of the global financial crisis in 2007 and 2008, or the parliamentary scandal in Britain and other countries. The extreme inequality in the world has been increasing throughout recent decades. We're producing more wealth, more technology, more innovation. We are creating more than we've ever done as a species. But we have a systematic economic apartheid where a very narrow portion is benefiting, but many aren't. And we're having this growth of speculative transaction and financial transaction on a scale that few people can even comprehend today, where very little of our finances are actually going into productive investment. Another part of this is the systematic non-payment of taxes by many around the world. Italy is actually the leader in the EU. In 2015, this is from 190 billion euros were not paid in taxes by companies and the wealthiest within that country. So we're creating wealth. It's going to fewer and fewer people, but also we then face these challenges in terms of the challenges for our healthcare systems, challenges for our education systems, challenges for infrastructure, for social well-being for so many. And in part, that's coming as one of the most famous speeches at the World Economic Forum that went viral when Bergman was saying, you can't speak about all these problems in the world today without talking about the fact that we're just not having companies and others pay taxes in many of our countries, because it's those resources that we need to actually address a lot of these problems. And I want to speak about another challenge. I've been working in peace building for 25 years, only on invitation and request all over the world to work to support people to engage, to address the conflicts that they're facing. And we've made incredible advances. We know how to do peace building today better than we ever have in the past. But since 2016, the number and scale of wars and of people dying from armed violence in the world has been increasing. It's been going down for decades before, but it's been increasing. And the impact of those wars. Here you can see a city that used to be as large as the city I'm in now. And it's been completely destroyed in Syria, in Libya. The increase of sexual violence during and after war. the effect it's having on people's lives. And right now also in Israel, Palestine, or the state repression we're having in Colombia as people are raising issues and different perspectives on how to address COVID. And just look for a moment at this child's face. I have children that were this age when this picture was taken, and the sheer terror that no human being should ever experience. Here, crossing the Mediterranean at night, arriving in Greece in the morning, and more people being displaced by war and violence. And this picture of Alan Kurdi, which sparked one of the largest responses by people of every generation and every background in Europe. You had cars and people driving from Germany and Austria down to Hungary and elsewhere to try and save people who were in horrible conditions and who'd been driven from their homes from the war in Syria. And then this picture of this young child, which struck people around the world. This is a picture that his aunt has asked us to use to share of him, Alan Kurdi. I always want to remember his name. I want all of us to remember his name. This is a picture from when he was playing in his hometown on a children's park. And you can see that joy in his face. I see that every day in my own children's face. And when you look at this picture, something that might strike you so powerfully is this day when he was playing, when he didn't know that there was anything to fear or that would strike terror. He was wearing the same clothes as the day he died, together with his mother and his brother, Galib Kurdi. You see them here together. We have over 20 million people bought and sold every year as slaves. I don't mean slave wages. I don't mean horrible labor conditions. I mean literally human beings bought and sold. These were people being trafficked in camps in Libya that the Italian government was partially having funds go to. And increasing radicalization and recruitment of people towards hate, spreading all over the world. In Europe, in the United States, these are 3 young school children from Britain who traveled to Turkey and then Syria to join ISIS. They were 15, 16 years old. Or ISIS training young children captured in Iraq to be their elite new soldiers when that movement held sway across so much of the country. But it's happening all over the world. Here was a picture from just a few years ago. And these are schools in the United States, which in violation of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, the military goes into schools and recruits people. These are scouts. Do you have the Scouts program in your country? This was a program created in the United States between the Department of Homeland Security and Scouts to train 14 and 15-year-olds in counter-terrorist operations. So the normalization of war and militarization, these are police on the streets of a local city. More and more police, especially in the United States, but in many parts of the world, including Europe, are former soldiers returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. Or you can see the militarization of policing tactics in China, in Turkey, in so many of our countries. Local police in St. Louis responding to Black Lives Matter demonstrations. This is in Romania, where our government has set a world record by doubling our military budget, increasing our spending on defense to make us safer, installing a missile system, which then made Romania a first strike country for a nuclear attack in the case of armed conflict with Russia. So to make us safer, we're now a first strike nuclear target. And increasing our military budgets. And in the lifetime of everyone who's on this call right now, dropping the largest non-nuclear bomb that was ever dropped in the history of human existence in Afghanistan by the US military on an area where there were largely civilian villages. And almost, I imagine very few of us even heard about this or have discussed it. We have this logic of perpetual confrontation that we're becoming more and more used to. We're good, we're right, our intentions are good, our motivations are valid, correct, selfless for the greater common good. And if we have deviations, if we accidentally bomb a wedding or bomb a village, it was necessary, legitimate, unfortunate, as we were trying to do what was right because we're good guys. Our interests are valid, what we're doing is defensive, we're trying to win, and we're using war. And the ones we're facing are evil, they're wrong, their intentions are bad, their motivations are illegitimate, self-interest, harming others. When they deviate, it's violations of moral order or international law. Their interests are devious, they're being offensive. The outcome that they win is unacceptable, and their means are war. And the problem is, all sides are saying this and seeing this. And here back in Europe, when people are questioning some of these things, we actually had in recent years the brutal murder and killings of the journalist Victoria Marinova, Jan Kuciak and his fiancée Martina Kusnirova, the Brazilian politician Marielle Francisco da Silva. We're having attacks on women's rights and the rights of LGBTQI and other communities. Now I need to do something where I take some of the pictures from the big presentation and I'm going to put them here. And I hope this is okay with everyone. I'm not going to speak for too much longer, but there's a few more things that would be great to share if it's okay. Is it making sense and is it all right for everyone so far? All right.
For me, it's amazing.
I really have to apologize because now I'm going to cross the line and I'm going to show you the scariest thing, which I have so far in my presentation. Can you see the pictures again?
Yes.
All right.
We see a very scary man.
Not only one, because you see Trump, no longer president, but very active. Xi Jinping, president in China, increasing military budgets, dramatic attacks on civil rights and liberties, mass arrests of human rights workers and lawyers, military expansion of aggressive Chinese posturing, seizing islands, seizing neighboring territories. Orbán in Hungary, extraordinary extraction and capturing of national wealth to benefit family members and childhood colleagues from kindergarten, while under the name of challenging the corruption of the regime before, which was really corrupt as well, capturing media control, legal judicial control. Erdogan in Turkey, building himself a magnificent palace, increasing military aggression in Libya, in Syria, reckless politics, Putin in Russia, Duterte in the Philippines, who ran for election promising to kill 100,000 civilians in his first year in office. A president in a European Union country waving a fake gun at journalists, telling them they know what they'll get if they continue asking too many questions. Bolsonaro in Brazil praising the military dictatorship, which executed students and human rights workers, journalists, people who were dissidents or had different views. So this is the point. I've given presentations like this in parliaments around the world, in the streets, in universities. And actually, before I get to this last bit, I stop after having presented some of the challenges and I ask people, when you think about these challenges that we're facing in the world today, do you have this deep knowledge, this certainty that our governments are doing the absolute best that they can, that we as a species are doing the best that we can to solve them? Are we bringing the best of our ability to find real solutions to these problems? Here you see the parliament, the government in China, in the United States, here in Romania. Are you filled with confidence of how we work to solve these issues? Or one of the European members of parliament in Poland giving his famous speech about how women are stupid and inferior and weaker, and therefore they should have less salaries. The promise of the current Prime Minister of Britain of 350 million coming back to the British Health Service every week as long as they would leave the EU. And the reality is we're having less and less trust and confidence in government because of these lies and misinformation and lack of accountability. There's a book that came out a few years ago by Rebecca da Costa called The Watchman's Rattle. And in it, she asked the question, how have all these civilizations throughout history collapsed? This is a question which a lot of academics and others look at. How is it, here you have in Cambodia, the Khmer civilization. Here you have the Mayan and Aztec civilizations, the Chinese Empire, the Roman Empire, the French Empire, and La Mission Civilisatrice and the British Empire, the Soviet Empire, the American Empire. How is it that all of what we have considered these civilizations that were seen as the greatest civilizations of their time in their advancement of knowledge, culture, governance, how have they all collapsed or are in the process of collapsing? And there are lots of different reasons that are given. Some are because of environmental factors, over-depletion of the environment, overpopulation, constant wars on the frontiers, disease which has ravaged the population, politics and corruption, energy and food shortages. You can find many different books in universities and on public bookstores about why these civilizations have collapsed. Why am I mentioning this? Because the point that Rebecca raises is when we're looking always at the question of why did they collapse, we might not ask another also important question. Why didn't they solve the problems they were facing? Why weren't they able to solve them? We know that many of them knew about these problems for a long time, but they still collapsed. And we know about the problems we're facing today. This is part of the global risk analysis done every year by the World Economic Forum. And one of the things that Rebecca mentions is these problems, they're a little bit like lily pads on a pond. You know, first there's one, and then there's two, and it looks beautiful. Then 2 becomes 4, then 4 becomes 16 because they have exponential growth. And what's interesting is what that means is the day before it can all still look beautiful and things can be okay. And then the next day, life in the pond dies because it reaches a critical collapse and it suffocates it. And her book is called The Watchman's Rattle, using this reference from medieval Europe, where you used to have these watch people who had a wooden rattle and their job was to walk through the village. And if they saw there was a problem, people stealing horses, a building burning down, they would shake the rattle and say, something is happening. Citizens, people, we need to act. And the problems we face today, they're not easy. They're complex. They're multidimensional, multi-causal. There's not one reason. There's many factors that feed into them. They're dynamic. They don't just sit in place waiting for us to solve them. They're interconnected and they're self-reinforcing. Now I want to just show a few other things. This at one point was the most expensive piece of military equipment ever built. It cost $1.5 trillion for each F-35 fighter jet, or sorry, the program altogether. Now the problem is it doesn't work. It was known halfway through the program that it would be outmanned, outgunned, out of range, visible to enemy sensors. Everything that it was being spent money on for, it didn't work. In fact, older models of American fighter jets were able to outcompete it in combat in the air. Now, it still has some strengths as a weapon of destruction and mass murder or killing, but we're spending this much money on it. Let me look at something here. This was a few years ago, our global military budget, $1.5 to $1.7 trillion a year. That's about $5 million every minute spent on creating the capability to kill. Now, this is what we have security and strategic studies programs on. This is what we're told is realist. These are real, issues and funds. Then you have other global costs. These are the most ambitious budgetings of the United Nations for what it would cost to eradicate world hunger, eradicate it globally, to end malaria, one of the worst killers in the world today still, to provide clean water for the nearly 1 billion people who don't have it in the world, to provide universal education, kindergarten to university for every child in the world who doesn't have it. These are what we are told are naive, idealistic. You don't understand the world if you want these things to happen. And look at the difference in budgeting. So I want to end this part of it with this quote. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Now, if you'll bear with me just a moment longer, it would be wrong for me to just speak about all these problems and not also give us for today a little bit of what else is happening. Because what else is happening is all over the world, people are engaging to change this. Louisa, I'm looking to your head to nod. Yes, you can see it.
You can see
Okay.
it.
We've got Malala Yousafzai, who long before CNN had ever heard her name, long before she became famous in the world, was already being threatened with death by the Taliban if she'd continue to speak up for children's rights. And we have Malalas and Gretas and others all over the world that are increasingly standing up. Here you see former Maoist combatants in Nepal who are getting involved to work in community peace building and to constructively address the challenges. Here you have 4 young people that were chosen by 28,000 youth in 36 countries back in 2007 and 8 to go to New York to bring a message of youth, to start a campaign to create a UN resolution on youth, peace, and security, saying that if youth can be raped, if youth can be forced to fight as soldiers, then governments, the United Nations, and everyone needs to start listening to and creating space for youth to be involved in working for peace. And we're beginning to see different types of leaders. Remember the faces of the leaders I showed you before. I don't know what you might have noticed about them in terms of age or gender, but we're also beginning to see very different leaders around the world. Leaders who engage in respect-based politics and governance, who reach out across political aisles, who work for reason-based solutions to issues. And we are seeing people rise to challenge systems and structures of discrimination and violence, which we have had in our communities and societies for generations and millennia. Standing up in the face of hate. This is a young Swedish woman of immigrant background who saw a march of the Nordic Brotherhood through their town, these men dressed, marching together, and police on the side protecting them. And people just standing there. And what did she do? She went up in front and she gave a salute of solidarity and defiance, of refusing to sit back and do nothing when we see hate and when problems are rising. And this is happening all over the world. People saying enough. These are the shoes of all of the children that have been killed in schools in the United States that year, placed out on the lawn in front of their government calling for action. People saying that there should be no fear in schools, that we need to stand up. This is in Spain, Britain, Romania, when for several weeks we had hundreds of thousands of people on the street every single night standing up against corruption in our country and calling for good governance. Here, I'm sorry you can't see this. This is a good friend of mine, Jo Barry, who's an amazing peace activist around the world. She started when she was very, very young as well. And this is Pat McGee, the man who blew up her father in the Brighton bombing when the IRA tried to kill Margaret Thatcher. And over many years, they found a difficult path to come together and to recognize the need to go beyond hate and to work for peace. Marwan al-Alika, a young man who was a fighter in Iraq when Daesh was rising up, who later joined together with people of all backgrounds to work for peace in Iraq. Or Farhan Ibrahim, whose community, the Yazidi people, were trapped on Sanjar Mountain. Thousands and thousands of young girls and women kidnapped by ISIS, Daesh, and brutally raped over months. People facing the most brutal horror and killings and starvation on the mountain. And he learned techniques for dealing with trauma care and recovery and went into displaced camps and worked with thousands of youth. Or Yazidi women who had been raped and then managed to be freed from Daesh, from ISIS, working both for themselves for trauma recovery and healing, but also to build a peace movement. We come and stand upon the shoulders of so many generations which have struggled to make change even under the most difficult circumstances. And one question I ask all over the world, in parliaments, in the UN, and with youth and children in schools, I sometimes ask them to give me the names of 10 wars throughout history, or 10 military heroes or figures throughout history. And any child above the age of 8 or 9 can do that in most parts of the world. But when you ask people to give you the names of nonviolent heroes, of nonviolent movements, sometimes we don't know them. But the reality is there are many. These are just a few. I wish I had the time to take you through the stories of each of them. And there's a website called Moral Heroes you can check. Or this amazing picture, which I ask people sometimes if they remember when I show them just the image of the man. This is from Tiananmen Square, which means Freedom Square in China, back in 1989, when the military was sent in to crush a nonviolent demonstration. And one man walking by went and he stood in front of the tanks, and you can see all the rest of the soldiers behind, and the courage that that took. And it gave time for thousands of people to get away and save their lives. Another quote, "The world is a dangerous place to live, not because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it." I'm very sorry that I've spoken for so long, and I haven't even begun to truly cover either the scale of the challenges we face or the breathtaking scale and beauty of what is being done all over the world. But as someone who started when I was 13, which is actually nearly 30 years ago, and I began a little bit earlier than that even, what I would say for all of us is while we have more creativity, more innovation, more people becoming involved than ever before in the history of the world, the scale of what we're trying to do to address these problems is nowhere near the scale of how big these problems are yet. We have the capacity for solution. We have the ability to change what is happening, to be the change we want to see in the world today. But truly, we need to do more. We need to connect. We need to unite. We need to learn from each other. We need to share together. We need to believe in our ability for change, to recognize actually this moment and how important it is, but to also know and understand the power that we have. My apologies for speaking so much. Thank you for taking part today and for what each and every one of us is doing every day. I hope all we do together through this event and beyond can help to support and strengthen that.
Thank you so much, Kai. As I've already seen in the chat, many people feel very motivated and inspired by your speech. So I think it was totally okay for you to take a little longer. And we are also happy that you shared your thoughts with us today. I also saw that there were some questions. I don't know whether people would still like to raise them right here now, because if you want to, please feel free to do that. We totally have the space for this. You can raise your hand or just speak up. If not, I mean, there will be some other room for discussion and for questions, but if you have any questions for Kai, just this is your moment. Otherwise, I would hand over to Rafaela.
Yeah, please don't hesitate. No, I just want to say to everyone, please don't hesitate. This is a shared space. It is a safe space. It's your space. So if anyone has anything you'd like to share in response or a brief question, please feel free to. I see Veronica does. Jake, maybe we could just turn off the screen sharing just while we have people briefly ask any questions if they wish to. And you can do it both in the chat space or by speaking out. Veronica, please.
At the beginning, I would like to thank you for your presentation because it really motivates us and gives us hope to change and that we can be the ones that will help others pursuing their dreams and stop the suffering. And I would love to ask you what inspired you the most to become such a person and to bring the change into the world?
I would say a few things, and thank you so much, Veronica, for your thoughts and for your question as well. A few things. One, I was raised with the most amazing family I could have ever imagined or dreamed of. My parents were, I can never thank them enough. They just gave us kindness and love, but they also showed us the world. And they also encouraged us to become involved and to engage on these issues. And it was that seeing the world, seeing early on the movie Cry Freedom about Steve Biko's life in South Africa. If you haven't seen that, watch that. Watching at 13, the movie Gandhi. But also my father and mother were both involved. They raised us to know that we could stand up, and that if there was something wrong in the world, you did something about it. For us, it was normal as having cereal for breakfast, which where I was growing up was what we had for breakfast. So if a government is doing something wrong, you change that government. And as Claudia said, we know that nonviolence is so incredibly powerful. Lots of studies on this, if you want. Studies and publications that show the breadth of ways we can change. It's not only about nonviolent actions. We need system solutions, like those solutions for how to create electricity out of soil or how to clean water. This is what's beautiful. So much space for creativity. And not every child is fortunate enough to have that space in their home. There's so much domestic violence. It struck me when I first came and fell in love with Romania, how much children are often raised not to believe in themselves by broader aspects of the culture and the religious institutions here. But this is where all of us can help, because we can do community education. We can bring peace education into schools. We can share positive examples. And this is part of what can help to inspire and encourage and empower ourselves and so many others. Veronica Pawlowska. And I'll stop very soon because I know there's so much exciting more that the team wants to bring forward with everyone. Please, Veronica.
Okay, so I wanted to say that I'm very touched after your presentation. It was amazing. And I wanted to ask you, what can teenagers like 16 years old, 17 years old do in order to fight against war? Because as a history major, we learn only about wars, which is not very helpful.
It isn't. And what you're learning is not history, or it may be his story, if you break that up, because usually what we learn about is the story of men, the stories of incestuous royal families, if you live in Europe, the stories of war. Do you know the most common public monument in Europe? A man on horseback, war monument. But this is not our story as humanity, as us. We don't learn the true story of colonization. We don't learn the true story of all these things, but we also don't learn the true story of liberation. We don't learn the story of more than half of the world's population, women throughout history. We don't learn all of these things. So one thing you can do, one thing we can all do together is let's start learning, let's start discovering, because when we begin to see the true stories, there's not one, but many, it opens up the world and helps us to see what we can do. The other is part of the idea of the project that is one of the partners behind this initiative, Do One Brave Thing, is it's to help us realize, to discover that we can all become involved in different ways. And it's learning those ways, which is so important. Sharing role models, training ourselves in how do we campaign? How do we organize? How do we find our voice? Some of the things which will happen throughout the course of the summit today. And you're going to also hear from people in Belarus who are standing up there, 2 amazing activists that we have joining us from Burma, Myanmar, and the story of youth getting involved there. There is so much you can do. You can study, you can choose issues you care about. Maybe you're a poet, maybe you have skills in graphic design, maybe you're a programmer, maybe you enjoy organizing, maybe you enjoy listening. In Hawaii, the indigenous people of Hawaii believe that everyone has a gift. Find what you love, what you're passionate about, and engage, and know that you are not alone. All over the world, people are rising. Last things I'm going to share super, super fast. Yes, we will share the presentation, and we will do a version that everyone can see all the pictures because they are powerful. Someone raised the issue about why is rape increasing, and my apologies for that, but it is so important. Do you know more women are killed in their homes and by people they know and people close to them than in all the wars in the world put together? That is a violence that needs to be stopped at every level. And some of these things are increasing because we're normalizing them, because we're having leaders that make fun of it or champion it, because we're promoting rape culture, because of all these aspects. There's a lot more in it. But peace building, someday, instead of people knowing who those warriors were, or people knowing what a soldier, my dream is that someday people have to go to a museum to remember what a soldier was. And everyone will know what a peace worker is. And we'll all learn in school, the same way we learn math and basic hygiene, how to solve conflicts constructively. Thank you all. And my apologies for speaking so much. Maybe one last question for Roxana, Luisa. Is it possible? Or comment?
I think it's possible. That's what it's for. Roxana, please, you can just unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure if I heard right. Well, thank you very much, first of all, for your speech, and also for the speech of the speakers before you. I think that both of you talked talked in a way so calmly about subjects so about a subject about some subjects so delicate and to talk about. And what my question would be, how are you able to talk about these things in a way so that you don't get angry at other people that still don't understand the importance of I don't know, education or rape or all these subjects? Because sometimes when I talk with other friends or people, sometimes without realizing I might get angry, but I'm not angry at them. I'm not necessarily angry at them, but at the issue itself. And I would like to know how you could stay so calmly, you know, because I think it's important, because if we don't stay calm, we don't have the people that need to understand this subject, and we might even aggravate the situation. And
Roxana, thank you so much for your question. It's such an important and a difficult one. I don't know if there's one answer to it, but I can just share with you from my own reflections and thoughts. You answered it in part yourself at the end, when you were saying how important it is. And for me, that's the anchor. I've had many people I love killed. I've been shot. I've been on the ground in war zones since I was 17 years old. I don't need to have had those experiences, though, to know how important these issues are, to know that what we're talking about are people's lives. And the reality is that if I'm in a moment and I'm discussing with someone and I get angry with them, my anger takes over and blocks the issue. That doesn't help us get more people involved or help people understand or bring about a solution. I understand the anger. I have with someone I love and respect and admire so much, Alejandro Bendania. He and I were training activists in Norway together about 20 years ago. And he said to them, I want you to be angry. There are things you should be angry about. If you're not angry, that's the problem. And I understand where he's coming from. I powerfully understand where he's coming from. When we see these issues, if we are not grasping what it means, at the same time, we need to become involved. We need to care, but we need to find the ways that are effective in reaching out. And I don't think there's one answer to what that is. I think there are many. Learning nonviolent communication, doing simulations and training together. When we were training brave activists here in Cluj, I know a number who are with us on this call now, we would do simulations about how do you speak to your family members? How do you speak to your friends in school? How do you communicate on these issues to get them across? So practice and train. And as an institute, we will organize events on this, and there are great movements and organizations across Europe and all over the world working on it. I'm also going to give my email in case anyone would like to get in touch further and any other way I can support. And I see Alexander's hand up. I'm going to leave it to you, Louisa, because I know there's so much more, and we want to give the space for everyone to be speaking together, especially we don't need more white middle-aged men being the ones talking too much.
I think it's fine, at least for me, because we also have the young people here speaking and raising their questions. And I think it's very important that they hear from you, because this is also something, you know, the intergenerational contact, and you are not old. So I think it's still fine. Alexandra, please, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry I cannot turn on my camera, but I'm at work, so I'm doing my best. I really want to get involved. So my question for you or for Kai, I don't know which one will answer. What do you think there are so many political leaders that promote such a negative perspective on women? Because if we look at Turkey or Poland, they are promoting this kind of negative, let's say, or unequal policies towards women regarding the abortion law, for example.
Alexander, thank you for your question. I do have an answer I'd like to share, but first I'd like to ask if there's anyone else who would like to share their thoughts or answer on it. Isabella, why do you think?
Sorry, Alexandra, could you be so kind to repeat the question?
Yeah, I was asking if what do you think there's more and more political leaders that are promoting this kind of negative perspective on women?
Well, I think there are many reasons why women are continuously undermined and are continuously not involved in high politics, in a lot of economics considerations during sessions. But I think a big problem that we have is that we are not inclusive, that we have to work extremely at an extreme length to bring inclusion. I wouldn't have necessarily one reason or two to give for why politicians choose to exclude us continuously, and not only from country politics, but we're excluded from European level conversations on women, peace and security, on women's involvement. And I've been talking a lot about the tokenism that we're facing, that young people and women are facing when it comes to making decisions, to being involved in economic decisions when it comes to women's rights, to peace and security, to abortion rights, and how we're disproportionately affected by all these decisions when it comes to working class, to women with children, to young people who are not given opportunities. I think this is my way of trying to answer to you that there are many reasons, and what this place is for is to bring all of us together to understand the reasons, to challenge them, analyze them, and take forward what we can do to peacefully fight them.
Does anyone else want to jump in before I do as well? And thank you, Isabella. So please put a hand up or just jump in if anyone wants to, and you can also come right after me. But one thing I would say, Alexander, we actually have an amazing session that is looking at this issue of the attacks on women's rights and LGBTQI plus rights, which are increasing across Europe. Here's some things I would just put out briefly. First, while I did say, yes, we've had on some forms the expansion of democratic practices, or at least demagogic. So remember, the Greeks had a term for a process where people make promises to others to get their support. That's called demagogia. That's not democracy. So when leaders make promises to get you to vote for them, that does not mean it is democracy. That's demagogia. Demos kratos is when people have power. And that can be organized in many ways. There's an amazing book. I don't have it with me right now, but we do have it in the Gandhi Peace Library, called The Life and Death of Democracy. And it shows over millennia how Demos Kratos has advanced. And it did not come from Greece, as most of us are taught in school. It was practiced in Mesopotamia centuries before. You have it in the Hindu Kush region between Afghanistan and modern-day Pakistan, then the Black Sea region, then you have it in Athens and elsewhere. But these weren't because of each other, didn't flow linear. It just came up because people have always been innovating and creating different ways of making decisions and addressing what's facing us. Now, why do we see increasing misogyny, but also hate in many forms? I would say a few factors. In part, the systems of economic and political, how we deal with solving conflicts, how we deal with all of these that are dominant or dominating today, have some aspects which they're highly effective at, but they really are fundamentally flawed. That shouldn't shock anyone. The reality is we've only had states as institutions for 0.4% of our existence as a species. I'm talking about the earliest prototype, proto-state. From the earliest form to today, 0.4%, we've had something called a state. As a species, we're always evolving and creating. These are the forms we have now. They will not be what we have in 10 years or 20 years or 50 years from now. But at this moment, our current systems, they are producing crises. Okay, without any comparison, anyone who does not understand that our current capitalist system is more deadly and destructive than any other system of governance the world has known. You can include the Soviet dictatorship. You can include the horrible famines under Mao. You can include the Nazi system. These are examples of aberrations of absolute and total systemic and structural violence on many levels. And on a global scale, that is also our current economic system. And it does produce a lot of good, but it is producing systemic destruction. Now, under that, we're having extremes growing, okay? So you have extremes in terms of access to control and distribution of wealth. You have extremes in terms of the rate of destruction of our natural environment. You have extremes in terms of concentration and control of the means of communication. So fewer and fewer people controlling more and more of our radio, television, newspapers, and also organized dissemination over social media or the scale of social media companies. And in this context, with these problems coming up, with these extremes, you're having some of these resistance. Yes, it is John Keene's book, Yanira. Thank you for sharing that there. You're having these manifestations of response. On the one hand, you're having people struggle to advance greater spaces of rights and freedoms. And on the other, you're having this rise of people feeling frustrated and excluded. Here's another book. We just had them speaking a few weeks ago. Everyone on my team must be tired of me sharing this, but this is National Populism, the Revolt Against Liberal Democracy. And one of the things that it really highlights well is many people voting for these misogynists and for people manipulating and fueling on hate. They're doing so because they feel left out and they have a lack of trust and they have legitimate issues which are giving no space to address. So we need to improve our democratic space. We need to also recognize that behind the rise of these misogynists, and whether it's Xi Jinping or Trump or Duterte, they're also often economic actors who are really bankrolling them and who benefit from having them in power. When you look at the measures passed during Trump's presidency for rolling back environmental protection, allowing dumping of toxic waste in water, groundwater, removing protection of national parks, reducing taxes paid. There are agendas behind this. They're not hidden, they're pretty transparent. But that's why all of this is coming together. Sorry, I apologize if that was a mess of an answer. It would take time to unpack, but I hope that it brings up some aspects. And now I'm going to stop speaking completely and thank everyone and give the space to those who should have it. Everyone.
Thank you so much, Kai, for our inspiring presentation and also for everyone's comments and suggestions and thoughts on this. It was really interesting to just hear from everyone. And I'll just like to introduce you now to the next session of today, which is Being the Change We Want to See in the World, Raising to the Challenge of Shaping Our Future. And in this session, you will get the chance to know the other two team members of Shaping the Future initiative, and also you'll get a chance to meet other participants. We have planned for you exciting activities for you to meet each other and talk about the current challenges that Europe and the world is facing today. So I hope you're ready. And also just to ensure that This will be a very inclusive event where everyone can just speak freely and be heard. So we will kindly ask you to be respectful towards the other participants, as well as to the speakers and the organizing team. Now I will hand over to Jake.
Thank you, Rafaela, and welcome everyone again to the Youth Summit. It's really an amazing opportunity, as highlighted by the first speakers so far, to bring youth together from all across Europe, young people who want to be inspired to create change in their societies and communities. If I can briefly introduce myself, I'm Jake, obviously. I'm 26, and I also work for the Peace Institute in Romania, Patria. And I've been working on this summit and the wider Shaping the Future of Europe initiative for the past couple of months to try to engage youth, like I said, all across Europe in various initiatives. For example, one of the things I created was these youth live sessions, which were to create an informal environment where youth can come together and engage in a cultural exchange. So to learn about different cultures, to learn about the different perspectives in different societies and how we can come together and address those perspectives. It was really this informal environment that allowed us to create an escape room. So we had an online escape room where we can engage youth to try to solve this escape room around the key themes of empowerment, democracy, inclusion. And this is really reflective of the wider youth summit that you're all attending today. It's really important that we're all engaged in this summit, sharing best practices, sharing ideas, and working together to think of innovative ways we can bring peaceful change to society. I think just so we can get into the breakout rooms, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself there. I'll pass over to my other colleague, Florina, who has also been working on this summit. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. I hope you can hear me properly. I also want very quick before the breakout rooms to introduce myself. I'm Florina. I was in charge, let's say, of the communications of the event, and I'm also working with Patria. And I'm very happy to say that probably you saw one of my posts or one of my messages and you joined the forum, the summit, and I'm very happy to see you. And I'm also the main organizer of the European Cafe in the Shaping the Future of Europe initiative. I don't know if you joined any of our previous events, but we are organizing these events where youth can basically share their opinion in an informal space, and they can tell us what they think about key issues happening in Europe. We had 4 so far, and we're going to have 1 more. Therefore, I think maybe one of my colleagues can share the event in the chat. It's going to happen soon on June 9, and it's on youth confronting anti-Semitism and the rise of hate in Europe. Therefore, if you are interested in the topic, we're going to have 4 amazing speakers, and you can join the event and you can share your opinion about it. And of course, maybe we're going to have more if you would like to join. So yes, thank you. And I'm going to leave you now to join the breakout rooms.
Thank you, you too. Thank you so much for also presenting each other. And we'll now start our first activity to get to know each other. And for this activity,